Alrighty, welcome to Chapter 2, Section 5 for IM1, Solving Equations Involving Absolute Value. So we get this kind of cute little graphic for find the absolute value. So keep in mind, absolute value is the distance away from 0, or at least that's the basic idea. So we just want to say distance from 0. And it could also be from a midpoint. It doesn't always have to be from 0. But in this case, we're kind of looking at 0. So with this one, what we're trying to show is we have the absolute value of 5 equals question mark. The absolute value of negative 5 equals question mark. So with this one, we want to show that it's 5 units from 0. So I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll do this one in a different color on this side. And positive 5 is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units from 0. So that's all absolute value is looking at, is how far away is it. We're not really looking at negative or positive. We do go left, we do go right, so we can still show the negatives and positive, but we're really looking more for the direction or the distance. When solving equations that involve absolute value, there are 2 cases to consider. We have case number 1, where the expression inside the absolute value symbol is positive or 0, so it's to the right side on the number line. And case number 2 is where the expression inside the absolute value is negative or to the left of the midpoint or 0. So let's go ahead and actually take a look at that. I think that's a little easier to explain if we work out a problem. So one of the first things we want to do when we're looking at an absolute value, and for this one actually, all we're going to do is plug this in. So this isn't necessarily an equation, this is an expression with absolute value. So we're just going to plug this x in. So we have 23 minus the absolute value of 3 minus 4x, and we're going to evaluate that if x equals 2. So we're just plugging 2 in. So we have 23 minus the absolute value of 3 minus 4 times 2, like that. And we're just going to work it out. Treat these like parentheses, just like any other grouping. So we do this first. We have 3 minus 4 times 2 is 8. 23 minus 3 minus 8 is negative 5. Now we have to take into account these absolute value signs, and we have to drop that negative 5 away, because now the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. It's 5 units away. So we say 23 minus, that's this minus 5. This is outside of the absolute value, so it still comes down. 23 minus 5 gives us 18. So that we've evaluated it down to one number. All right, an ice cream should be stored at 5 degrees Fahrenheit with an allowance for 5 degrees. Write and solve an equation to find the maximum and minimum temperatures at which the ice cream should be stored. So for this guy, we want, no. All right, we want to identify some pieces. So first, it should be stored at 5 degrees. So 5 Fahrenheit is our midpoint. So this is where we want it to be. But there's an allowance for 5 degrees. So that means it could be plus 5 degrees, it could be minus 5 degrees. So this is our plus and our minus, because this is our allowance. Allowance is plus and minus. All right, so the equation we want to write is temperature minus 5, absolute value, equals 5. And we want it to be minus 5 because this is our allowance right here, okay? This is the plus or minus. This 5 goes in right here, and I know they're both 5, so it's a little funny. When we put it in grouping, we do the opposite. So it's only when it's not in grouping that does it go in as a positive if it's positive. But once we group it, it goes in as a negative, and it has to do with how we factor and finding roots and things like that. But it sometimes seems like that is the opposite of what we should do, but this will get us the correct answers here, I promise. We'll see in just a second. So instead of temperature, I'm just going to bring it down to T. So case 1, we have T minus 5 equals 5, and case 2 equals T minus 5 equals negative 5. So now if I add 5 to both sides, I end up with T, these cancel because any number myself cancels out, equals 10. And then again, I'm going to add 5 to both sides, and we have T, again, these guys cancel, equals 0, because I have negative 5 and positive 5. So my allowance is anywhere from 10 degrees to 0 degrees, with an ideal temperature of 5 right in the middle, right? So that kind of makes sense. We can picture that being right in the middle there. Write an equation involving absolute value for the graph. Let's see. We want... Do I actually see arrows there? Okay, so we're kind of going from the distance, and we want to figure out, we wouldn't necessarily have arrows on this one. I'm thinking inequalities, crazy person that I am. Absolute value, not inequalities. Mixing too many of my math classes together here. So what we want to do is kind of find the midpoint, and there's a few ways you could do that. You could kind of jump back and go 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it's going to be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's my midpoint right there, is 22. I could also use a formula where I say midpoint equals 1/2 0.1, 0.2 plus 0.1, like this. So I would have 1/2 0.2, which is 27, plus 0.1, which is 17. It really wouldn't matter which one is 0.1 and which one is 0.2. So we have equals 1/2 44. When we add these together, 27 plus 17 is 44, equals 1/2 of 44 is 22. So either way, we end up with the 22. Just kind of depends on how we want to work that out. And now we need to know the distance. We want to know how far do I need to move in to 22, since that's our midpoint. So we say distance from 22 minus 17 and 27 minus 22. There's two distances here. We need to make sure that they're equal to each other real quick. So this is 5 and this is 5. So yay, we moved 5 units. So this is the equal part, okay? Just like up here, the allowance was 5. This is kind of the same idea. This is an allowance of 5 units. And the midpoint is what we place in the absolute value. So we have x minus 22, because that's our midpoint. It's positive, but remember when we put it in the grouping, we have to flip that sign. And that's going to equal 5. So here is our absolute value for this equation. Alrighty, that is the all of section number 5, and I will see you in section number 6.